What is going on, Niner fam? Hope everybody's having a great Saturday. Unfortunately, you're probably watching playoff football, and it doesn't include the 49ers.
No.
So if you don't feel like watching that, come over and watch me and DreArea Sports as we talk kind of all the latest 49er offseason news and a lot of the stuff going on in 49er land. The season may be over, but there's always Niner news. Uh, but before
Always.
we do, but before we do that, I wanted to introduce Dre Area Sports. uh, I I just happened to catch him on with my guy Sterling Bennett the other day,
It's a great guy.
and I was interested in having you on to talk some Niner stuff. You do a lot of stuff. You don't just cover the 49ers. You cover basketball as well. Do you cover baseball?
Yeah, I cover baseball, basketball. I do a sports show for IE Sports Radio, and so when I do that sports show, then I cover I cover Giants, Warriors, 3C2A, which is like like community college football, and then I'll touch on earthquakes and sharks just to get the scores out there. But the big three is Giants, Warriors, and 49ers at the very top. And so all my content, usually when it's not centered around IE Sports Radio, then that's usually I'm just covering the Niners. So I've been a Niner fan my whole life, dude. My whole life.
Me too. Me too. Since
And
1990.
Even my kids, I'm like trying to get them into the game, into the sport, and they'll watch it with me. But like I remember at their age, at 9 or 10, I was already like freaking balls deep into this. It's like getting all emotional and crying when they lose, like damn it, no. But and it's sort of how I felt this year with the way the season went. It was just such a frustrating year that I was like, man, what else could go wrong this year? And then as I say that, more things went wrong throughout the entire season, which was very, very frustrating.
When did you kind of disconnect? Because I think the Buffalo game is where it kind of. I mean, I was paying attention, but I kind of felt like, okay, we just got to
probably the Buffalo game, but I would say that was a hard one for me because I had to work the following morning at like 2 a.m. So, that game I was able to let it go because I was like, you know what, it's over. I'm just gonna go to bed. I had a legitimate reason, but I would say I really let go in terms of like really caring, which I always care, but to a certain extent.
Me too.
Probably the Miami game. I think at that point, I felt like in the fourth quarter, I wasn't as committed as I was earlier this season. I was just kind of like, well, fuck, they're gonna lose. Can I swear in your show, or you want me not to?
Go ahead.
Okay,
I'm not
cool.
monetized anymore. YouTube punished me.
Yeah, I'm not monetized either, so I say all kinds of harsh language.
It's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say the Dolphins game was probably the first time that I let go. Even by halftime, I wasn't as committed, and I thought the last time I'll tell you what, the last time that I was overly committed, where I was intently watching this, like, oh my god, here we go, was the Rams game.
Me too.
And that was such a turd of a game that I was like, oh my god, this is how it goes down. With Brock Purdy turning into fucking Brock Noodle Arm, just like it's raining. I tell you what, Brock Purdy to me, and I'm a huge Brock Purdy fan, but I always make this comparison that Brock Purdy is like a Mogwai. You know what a Mogwai is? A Mogwai is Gizmo. Okay, so he's kind of like Gizmo, where you can't get him wet. You probably can't feed him after midnight. He has all these rules. You can't play him in the snow. You can't play him if it's too hot. Can't play him in the rain, because it just seems like when the elements are too much, he lays a turd and he turns into a gremlin. You're like, oh my god, what happened? I mean, look at the playoffs against the Packers on a rainy game. He played awful until the second half, especially the fourth quarter, when he led the team down the field and to take the lead and to eventually win the game. So if the conditions are right, Brock Purdy is amazing. But if the conditions are just a little bit off, he hasn't shown me, at least, that he can overcome harsh elements. And it's sad because one guy that did was Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, Garoppolo, he had, for all of his faults, he played against the Packers in the fucking snow. And he led the team, and he played awful that game. I actually rewatched that game recently, and I was like, man, Jimmy played like shit. And then at the end of the game, what did he do? He led us down the field to get that field goal to win the game. And he hit all of his passes. I was like, wow, that's crazy. But
I'm still a big Brock. I'm still a big Brock Purdy guy. I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think watching the playoffs, it was on. I didn't watch the game, but I followed on X. It goes to show that you can look like $1 million and have a big arm and be 6'5" and have all those prerequisites. And if you're a choke artist in the playoffs, it really doesn't matter. So
yeah,
if we're going to go based on that, because, if you do your ratings or you listen to Nick Wright or you listen to guys like Grant Cohn or whoever, they all, they love all the big four, the big five top quarterbacks. And, in Justin Herbert's probably one of those guys as well because he looks the part.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely in that top. I would say that top 5 that some of those guys talk about. Obviously, the big 3 in the pantheon would be Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen, right?
Yep.
And so I think it's one of those things too where it's like, hey, look, I mean, CJ Stroud somewhere in there. I don't know about top 3 within the hierarchy of the godlike quarterbacks, because I mean, there's some quarterbacks that are really good, and then there's those quarterbacks that are like superhero status, and that's the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jackson, and the Josh Allens. Everybody else is just really, really good, but those guys are like exceptionally good.
Lamar Jackson, though, he is a pumpkin in the playoffs. He hasn't shown the ability to win in the playoffs. Say what you want about Brock Purdy. He's got a 4-2 record.
He does.
He's helped lead the Niners to an NFC Championship game and a Super Bowl. He might have created the mess for one of those games, the Green Bay game, but the fact that he was able to figure out a way to help the Niners win that game, and then of course the big comeback in the NFC Championship game. So I feel like the goalposts continue to move with Brock, depending on what it is you want to argue about, whether it's his lack of size, lack of arm strength, small hands, or whatever, or draft status, and then then there's the argument of like what he does in the playoffs and what he does when it really matters. Now this year, Brock had a down year, so all the criticism is fair. I have no issue with any of the criticism towards Brock, but I think it was a team. I thought the team wide was a failure this year, not just Brock Purdy.
Oh yeah.
If you watched a lot of the takes that people would have online when trying to place blame on the 49ers, a lot of people put it on Brock and solely Brock. And that's just not the case. I mean, the defense at most of the time when we needed them this year to get big stops late in games, they were like a sieve. And, special teams was an absolute clown show led by one and only Jake Moody. So, like I said, it's fair to make criticisms towards Brock. I think they're all fair. But if we were going to do that, I think we needed to go across the board this year. And all these big name quarterbacks that we talk about, a lot of them can't win in the playoffs. The only one that consistently does it is the guy in Kansas City, and he's got 3 Super Bowls, could be 4, could be a three-peat this year. So, I wanted to start just with your overview of what exactly went down or what went wrong this season. If you had to give it just a quick, if you had to analyze it quickly, what was the determining factor why the Niners had such a bad season? It could be anywhere from the Super Bowl hangover to injuries to bad coaching hires, whatever, you name it. What is Andre's what's your take on all that?
I think the first sign that something was wrong with this season was when they went with Nick Sorensen. I was like, wait a minute, what? We just came from the Super Bowl and we're going with a guy that most of us don't even know who he is. Yes, he used to play the game, but he's never been a defensive coordinator. How are you supposed to get back to the Super Bowl with a first-year defensive coordinator? So that to me right away, that was like, okay, that's a big problem. But the team is very talented. So is this going to be like a Brock Purdy situation, but with a coach where it's like, yeah, he's there, but the team knows what to do? Probably not. And so that was the first sign that, like, okay, there's a little bit of trouble in paradise here, but maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. And then obviously the Brandon Ayuk holdout, the Trent Williams holdout, those were not good. Those were really bad. During the draft. I mean, God bless him. He had a good year, and I'm excited for him as well. But when they announced Ricky Pearsall, nobody saw that coming. Everybody was like, wait, what? Who the hell is Ricky Pearsall? We need an offensive lineman. And so that was the biggest issue. We knew that after the Super Bowl, we knew, okay, if there's one thing that the Niners need to fix on this team, it's the offensive line. And did they do that? No, they didn't do that. They brought the same group back. They ran it back with the same offensive line. And that was the biggest problem going into this year. I'm like, dude, you guys couldn't fucking block Chris Jones in a play where Brandon Ayuk was wide open, in a play where Juwan Jennings cut to the outside and had a clear path to the end zone. You had two receivers open for a touchdown, but you blew the coverage of the offensive line and you let Chris Jones, the biggest, baddest fucking defensive lineman on that team, run free.
He was blown. Think about this. He's blown up 2 Super Bowls for us.
Yes.
Because he absolutely wreaked havoc in the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo quarterback too, back in 2019.
I want to say he's the one who batted down the pass.
Yeah.
I think it was second down, and Garoppolo was throwing a crossing. He was throwing it across the middle to Deebo Samuel, and he batted it down. And on the replay they were showing, if Deebo would have caught that ball, he had a ton of room to take off. That would have been a fat play, which would have gave us momentum. And he batted it down. Hey, good on him. He made a play. But going into this, we thought, okay, obviously the offensive line is our biggest area of concern. That something has to change there. Something. Instead, they brought the same group back. Now, a lot of heat went on Colton McKivitz. Everyone was like, oh, Colton McKivitz. But he actually didn't have that bad of a year. Is he the greatest there? No. Should they replace him? Probably. But the worst was Jake Brendel and even Aaron Banks. They both played like shit. And honestly, Aaron Banks being a free agent, I would not even waste the money to bring him back. He did not show me that he's earned a pay raise. If he's going to come back for a small amount, fine. But if he wants a bigger contract, dude, go elsewhere. Dude. We'll find somebody else. So, it's still 14-0 at halftime. Ravens Steelers. That's your ESPN update. But I would say the 2 holdouts, but Nick Sorensen, that was the first sign that something was wrong. That was the first sign where it was kind of like, wait a minute. You fired Steve Wilkes, but you didn't really have a plan. There wasn't somebody there that you were like, hey, we're going to get this guy to replace Steve Wilkes, and it's going to be awesome.
Kyle talked about it, though, in the press conference to end the season recently. He said that because of how late they got started, the last couple of years they've had, you just don't have the time to do what you have to do because you're getting a lot of your work. You're starting in February.
Well, that was the thing. They knew they wanted to get rid of Steve Wilkes. They knew that for sure. I mean, at one point, Kyle Shanahan called a defensive timeout in that final drive against the Chiefs because he was like looking at Steve Wilkes saying, what are you doing right now?
He did. You're right. I forgot about that.
And so I believe that, going into the offseason, he was fed up with him. He was like, dude, I don't want this guy here. I don't want him here. He pissed me off. I need to get him out of here. And not only that, but like the defense would regress. We had a bye week. They played really good, and then they started to regress again. You kind of saw it towards the end of the year. You're like, our defense kind of looks like shit. And then they played terrible against both the Packers and the Lions. Now, I did think in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, other than that last drive, the defense played extremely well against the Chiefs. I mean, for most of that game, Patrick Mahomes couldn't do shit. He kept getting sacked. He kept getting pressured. What's his name?
Jair Brown?
Well, no, Jair Brown intercepted him. But I'm saying, like, a lot of the defensive linemen all had sacks on him. Eric Armstead had a sack. Nick Bosa had a sack. Hargrave had a sack. They were all getting in there. And I want to say Chase Young had a sack. And so they were all contributing and they were all playing really well. The problem was that, well, there's a lot of problems, but special teams was a problem that opened the door, got them right back in the game. And it's funny because when you look at this season, you saw that a lot. You saw a lot of games where special teams would rear its ugly head, and all of a sudden, there'd be a bad kick or punt coverage. There would be, a fat return by the other team's, a kick or punt returner. We'd fumble, on a kick or punt return. So there was always something that the special teams was doing, missing field goals. Like, oh my God. And so that's the thing. We knew going into it, offensive line's a problem. Didn't address it. Defensive coordinator, yeah, it was kind of a problem. A lot of fans were like, get this guy out of here, but you had no plan to get somebody else. You tried to get Bill Belichick. He shut you down on the phone call. And now it's 21-0. God. He shut you down on the phone call. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be defensive coordinator. I'm going to go to TV. And now he's at North Carolina. Like, what? And then they tried to go for Steve Spagnuolo. And what happened? The Chiefs paid him more. And he stayed. It was like, wait, what? I would have been like, hey, whatever they're paying you, I'll double it.
Triple it.
I know. I don't care. I need you over here and you away from them. And so that was the biggest sign. And then the Brandon Ayuk holdout, that was way overblown. He overplayed. He overstepped his own holdout. And then what did he do? He fucked himself up. He wasn't in OTAs. He wasn't in preseason. He wasn't getting the reps that he needed. And when we finally saw him in the regular season, he was a shell of himself. And it was a microcosm of just all kinds of bad fuckery. And then on top of all of that, Christian McCaffrey. Oh, my Achilles. Like, what? What are you talking about? That was just horrible. Like the fact that he was gone for that long was just unbelievable. And you can see
I don't think that was something. I don't think that the one thing that what really worries me is how long did they know that he was having issues? You know what I mean? In the
offseason. I mean, they had to have known.
With the fact that they paid him. He like all these players that kind of stepped in line in front of Ayuk to get paid in the offseason, which was a little bit of a problem for me, that Ayuk was the one that was coming up on the big deal.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we have to pay Christian McCaffrey, and then we have to pay Trent Williams, and then we have to pay Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was priority one and should have stayed priority one. I want to talk about the emotional toll that Deebo Samuel talked about losing 2 Super Bowls to the same team and being depressed and not wanting to talk to anybody and leaving the house, and how you got 3 weeks to get over it, and then you're right back in OTAs having to start the whole league over again, after going to the championship game, after winning the championship game, getting back to the Super Bowl. To me, I felt as a fan defeated, that I wasn't thinking about going back at it after the season when we lost that Super Bowl, the second one to the same team in a heartbreaking fashion. Because as a fan, it's just like, I mean, it was last year was the perfect scenario on so many levels. Just how good the offense was, just how the injuries broke. There wasn't a ton of long-lasting injuries that really affected the team long term. And this past season, every single thing that broke for us in 2023 went completely the opposite way in 2024. And I never felt at any point during the season that this team had the fight that it needed to kind of overcome whatever demons that they were still fighting from losing that last Super Bowl. Yeah. So everybody's talking real good and talking about how, they're going to come back next season and be really, really angry. But my biggest issue is how much of a feast or famine, or a, what's the word I'm looking for? Or like, it's either Super Bowl or bust with the 49ers. They either have a really good season and they get right up there at the end, or they have a season like they did in 2020 or this past season where they have a ton of injuries, and just an overall poor play the whole season. Why can't we have something in the in between? A season that's a little bit of all that stuff, but not quite to the place where it went this year. So this past season, I'm glad it's over. I'm a little sour not that I'm not watching the Niners in the playoffs, but
I know
we're gonna have an interesting offseason, that's for sure. There's already drama starting with our offensive coordinator. We named Clay Kubiak our offensive coordinator, and then the NFL came in and says you can't do that. You need to go through the proper hiring channels, uh, aka the Rooney Rule. So the
Yeah,
Niners are back. I don't even understand that because he's not even an offensive coordinator. He's just a title. So I don't understand that at all.
Well, I think those kind of positions, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, those are positions that you have to post. Like, it's like at my job. Obviously I'm not in the NFL, but I'm just saying, if there's a position that needs to be filled, you have to post for it. Otherwise, everything can go wrong. And I think in this case, they have to post for that job because everyone has to have a fair shot. Others have to have a fair shot at, interviewing for that spot. Is it a waste of time for everybody else? Absolutely. It's really dumb. And again, this is something, and look, I am not a Kyle Shanahan, like, oh, it's all on Kyle. But one thing I think is ridiculous is that in the Super Bowl, Kyle didn't know the Super Bowl rules, right? And again, he makes an offhand comment like, oh yeah, I'm going to put Clay Kubiak, as my offensive coordinator. You can't say that. You can't do that. What are you doing? They needed to make sure that they're going through proper channels to make sure that that's something that you can do and then you can say. And so sometimes Kyle does this where he kind of just does something because he thinks, yeah, I could do that. And then you can't. And then it's like, oh, okay. Now, are they going to get penalized for that? No, they're not. They're going to have to interview everybody. That's why earlier on X, I was like, breaking news. Niners are penciling Brad Graham and Johnny Dell for their offensive coordinator position.
You
and
had
I was
me
like,
for a second. I'm like, really? Are they really going after those guys?
And then I was like, breaking news: John Chapman is now in the running for that position because it's so stupid. It's like, come on, they might as well because they're going to be like, hey, thanks a lot, thank you for your time, Clay. You got the job. Okay, thank you. And that's going to be it. Now, he hasn't really had that kind of position. Apparently, he's been saying that Clay's been doing it this entire time. I don't know how long he's been doing it for, but the last time he had someone in that position was Mike McDaniel. And so since he left, they haven't really named somebody else who's doing that job. So I think it's good for Kyle Shanahan. I think he needs somebody else in his ear saying, hey, what are you doing? Or maybe we should do this and being, suggesting things to him. So I think that'll help. But the whole thing itself is it's just really silly. The whole thing is silly.
So speaking of coaches, we of course fired John Schneider, our special teams coach.
Thank God.
That wasn't a big surprise.
Yeah.
I think 49ers fans wanted it right after the game, the last game of the season, but we had to wait.
They wanted it the bye week. I was saying in the bye week, he's got to go. He's got to go. I even said if the Niners lose to the Cowboys, Nick Sorensen has to get fired. But the thing is that Kyle Shanahan is not the kind of guy who's going to fire somebody mid-season. He's not. He's going to stick with his guys unless they do something stupid like, get a DUI or, like make headlines. But he's going to stick with his guys and just ride this out because that was the commitment he made. He's a professional like that. He's not going to make a scene. He's not going to, fire somebody on the spot and, bring attention, bad media to the team. But he absolutely had to go. We were dead last in special teams. I would say special teams cost us at least 4 to 5 games. It felt like
he also had a lot to do with the input of drafting Jake Moody as well.
Yes, a third-round pick.
If that's not a fireable offense based on how he's played, really since we drafted him, he's been overmatched since we drafted him. Nobody agreed with the draft pick. You don't draft kickers that high.
You don't draft kickers, period.
And when you see kickers that are from the USFL or off the street or kicking in soccer, I mean, they're not even in football, and they're able to make kicks. And we got a guy drafted in the 3rd round where we probably could have drafted an offensive lineman, offensive tackle. That's a fireable offense. Then, of course, we go to the defense with Nick Sorensen. You talked about it. Probably wasn't qualified for the job, but the Niners were up against it at the time of the year they were at, so they had to make, which was probably one of their worst decisions, and definitely a downgrade from Steve Wilkes. Whether you want to put the Super Bowl loss on him or not, I personally think he had a lot to do with it. But so that wasn't a surprise either. Again, fans wanted to have it happen a lot sooner. So now we're at the point where we're going to get a new defensive coordinator. I wanted to get Andre's take on who is your guy, or who are someone you would like to see the 49ers bring in as DC. Are you on the
Oh,
solid train? Are
absolutely.
you
Robert
you're
Saleh.
you're all about Robert Saleh?
Robert Saleh. And the reason why is this: when it comes to, especially a coach, you want to bring a guy in who has that familiarity, who knows the players know him, the players know what to expect, he knows what to expect out of most of these players. He knows the system, he's familiar with the organization, he's familiar with the facility. I think that for me, if you want to get back to where you were, getting him in here is going to help the team much quicker than getting somebody else in here who has to who has to learn our system or implement his own system within our system. So to me, it's kind of like, hey, look, you're going to bring a guy back who's worked with a lot of these guys already and had a lot of success. So to me, that's the guy to go with, is Robert Saleh. Now, is there a chance he can get a head coaching job? I think there is, but when you look at who else is out there, there's a chance that I don't think he's going to get either one of those jobs. Chicago, he's probably not going to get. I don't think he's going to get Jackson. He's not going to get Jacksonville or the Raiders. All of them probably want Ben Johnson. He's probably going to go to Chicago, I would imagine. Pete Carroll interviewed for Chicago. I'm sure he's going to interview for the other position. So to me, that's the guy to get because he already has a proven success. Last season, the Jets were the number 3 ranked defense in the league. This season, before he got fired, their defensive numbers were tops in the AFC. Yep. And until they fired him, then the whole thing kind of came off the rails. And one thing they can't do, though, is they can't go sign Aaron Rodgers because then Robert Saleh is going to be like, I'm out. I'm not going there, guys. Sorry. But to me, it's Robert Saleh. And if it's not Robert Saleh, then the next guy after that would probably be either Jeff Ulbrich or Dennis Allen, just based on experience alone.
What do you make of Kyle's comments about, teams adjusting to the 49ers and that he'd be open to, changes with the defense or the offense in general, like teams, I mean, the Niners have been doing this thing with Kyle and John since 2017, and the Niners aren't taking anybody by surprise anymore. People know what the Niners do on offense and defense. Do you feel it? Do you find it to be there's a lot of I really love Robert Saleh, but to me, it's also a safe pick and doing what's best for the players. And I feel like the Niners sometimes they tend to placate to their players, at least with the last couple of defensive coordinators that have been in the building. And to me, it doesn't always produce the best results, especially with Nick Sorensen. He was a guy the players already knew. He was familiar with the guys in the building. Everybody was a big fan of his. And so that my only concern with the familiarity is that we talk about running it back and doing things the exact same way. Well, I always feel when you do things the same way and you run it back the same way and you haven't reached the success that you were trying to go for, then sometimes to me it doesn't seem like the most aggressive or the best way to go about things. But if the players want him and they want to bring him back and it looks like he's the top guy out there that they're looking for. So at this point, it's pointless to even discuss if he doesn't get a head coaching job. Let's not forget we got in New England, it looks like they're all but signing off on bringing in what's his face from the Titans.
Oh, Mike Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel. So
but that was obvious, though. I mean, like, and of course he used to play there. They're familiar with him. I mean, to me, that was the pick they were always going to go with was Mike Vrabel, and if he said no, then they'd be like, oh shit. But to me, it always felt like Mike Vrabel was going to be the guy there.
I forgot what Chris Sims said. I know he made a comment about Brock Purdy.
He made there was a clip where he was talking about paying Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is outrageous because of his lack of skills. Some dumb shit. And the problem is that like Chris Sims is talking all this shit and he fucking sucked. He was a backup quarterback and he was terrible. So it's kind of like, dude, shut up.
Why is it that all the bad ones, especially like the Sean
That's all they can do.
The Sean Salisbury's,
Dan Orlovsky, like he sucked too. They all sucked.
You ever notice they have the biggest axe to grind against quarterbacks that are more successful than them?
Oh, of course.
Even a guy like Brock Purdy. I just don't understand why they let. I mean, Nick Wright. He's probably never played any type of athletics in his life. He probably got his books dumped daily in school
Well, that's
by
what they do, though. I mean, when you look at these guys, they they grift off of sports. I mean, these are national sports guys, so they have to find something to kind of grift off of every single day. So that's why they attack certain aspects of teams, knowing that fans will get lit up and start reacting to it and making comments about it. That's what they want them to do. Nick Wright, especially, Colin Cowherd, another one. You could argue that Grant Cohen is the same thing. He brings up topics that he knows that will trigger people and will generate clicks and views. And is that his true opinion? Maybe, maybe not, but that's his game, and so that's what he's going to do. I mean, honestly, a lot of my friends will watch him, especially when the Niners lose, because they just want to have a shit fest, where they know that he's going to give that to them. So everybody has their niche, and everyone's doing what they can to, generate clicks and views and they're promote their own product. But that's all they're doing. I mean, that's all those guys. I mean, you think that Colin Cowherd studies the Niners offense and no, he doesn't do any of that shit. He just watches the game, looks at what's trending, and then goes with that.
100%. One of the reports coming out of 49er land is they are rolling over $50 million in cap space, which we already knew.
Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, the Niners were going to have at least by this point about a little over 60 million in cap space before they make any moves, re-signings, restructures, and before they touch Brock Purdy. So say what you want about the 49ers, but there's one thing that I never worry about with them, and that is the cap. Parag Marathe is a cap savant. The way the Niners work their contracts. I think a lot of people, especially 49er fans, who think that Brock Purdy's going to eat up a bunch of the money under the cap, which would stop us from signing big free agents or keeping certain players. A lot of people do not know exactly how the cap works. There's a couple people on X that you can go to, including my guy Jason Hurley. He's a cap specialist. So if you're gonna freak out about the cap or freaking about what the Niners are doing, do some homework before you do. The Niners are going to be just fine going into next season. To me, with the Brock Purdy situation, that contract really doesn't get going probably till his third year. So it's all to me. It goes based on all about guaranteed money and what he gets as a signing bonus. So not a big concern for me going forward. I think the Niners will be reasonably aggressive in free agency.
I think so.
But I also, when I say reasonably, I've had this discussion with a couple people. Maybe one mid-level signing that a center, something you don't want to draft, and Kyle doesn't, trust rookies, especially a rookie center. Maybe a free safety to kind of fill maybe that Tayshaun Gibson role. The Niners got a lot of guys that can play that box safety position, but they don't quite have that center fielder. So they're center fielder. So there is a couple positions I think in free agency that they could attack. Any thoughts on them rolling over the cap? Are you surprised that the 49ers aren't the New Orleans Saints, who always seem to be in some sort of salary cap hell every season?
Well, it just shows that they run things very efficiently when it comes to their salary cap, and they've always done a very good job at that. Even in the dark days, they were pretty good at it. Parag Marathe was always there. To me, look, you got 50 million rolling over. Obviously, some of that will go to Brock Purdy because they have to pay him his contract. He's going to get a bunch of signing bonuses. How much of it is guaranteed, we'll see. I think he's probably going to end up getting something around $50 to $55 million contract. Probably for 4 to 5 years. It could be even longer. It could be like a 7-year, 6-year deal. Who knows how long they want to go lengthwise. I think Colin Kaepernick got a contract like that when he signed. He got like a 6 or 7-year deal, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is amazing!" And then we know how that went. So
me and you are very much the same.
I was so excited, dude. I was like, "This is badass, dude. We got cutting edge. This guy's athletic."
You were probably the same when Garoppolo was signed.
I have his jersey.
After the 5 games, you were like, "We finally got a quarterback."
Yeah, dude.
I did the same thing.
I don't
same
know where
thing
it's
when Lance
at.
was drafted. When Trey Lance was drafted, I was super happy.
It's not in there. I used to have the jersey in here because I was trying to give it away. But I may have brought it inside. But I have a Jimmy Garoppolo jersey. A buddy of mine bought it for me the year after we got him, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is amazing!" And then you start watching him, you're like, "Oh no!" But to me, look, with the amount of money that you have rolling over and who they need to get in free agency, I think for me, my number one target is DJ Jones. That's the guy I want to bring in here. That's the guy I want to bring back. Now, look, I'm sounding like a homer. I'm over here like, get Robert Saleh, get DJ Jones. You know, I'm like living the past, it feels like. But I think that's the kind of guy
Quest
you need.
for 6, run it back.
Quest for 6. But this is it. This is, if you don't win it this year, then I think I'm not sure how it looks moving past this next season. If they don't make the playoffs next season, oh my God, everyone's going to get rolled over. The heads are going to roll. But if we don't win the Super Bowl, let's say we get there or we go deep in the playoffs and they lose, that's different. But if we have another losing season, then heads are going to roll. But this is the last season in which you can really, really spend some money, because even when you sign Brock Purdy, this next year will be his cheapest year out of his whole contract, right? And we know Brandon Ayuk, same thing. It only gets more expensive as he goes on. All these contracts, they get more expensive each and every year. So it kind of builds up to it. We know that Deebo Samuel also is getting like 25 million, 28 million, something like that this next season. And he's probably not going to restructure his contract, but who knows? Maybe he will. He put his foot in his mouth this season, and you can see him, what do you call it? Processing that on the field when he dropped that pass against the Rams and on the sidelines, like, I was like, oh my God, dude. He's like, get a hold of yourself. But anyway, I think their biggest target is going to be someone like DJ Jones. They need somebody in the interior who's a run stopper, because even when you got Javon Hargrave, and the idea was that, oh yeah, Javon Hargrave and Nick Bosa are going to, rain terror on all these defensive linemen. All they did was opposing teams were like, all right, well, let's just run at Javon Hargrave because he sucks against the run. And they just ran right past him. He was not good. He was not a run stopper. So I think DJ Jones is the guy I would look for, because you got to get somebody in there that's going to shore up that running game. And that was the problem all year. They could not stop the run. Look at the game against the Lions. I mean, they actually probably could have won that game, but they couldn't stop the run. So at that point, it was like, well, what's the point? It doesn't matter if we score 50 points. They're going to score 70. You know what I mean? It's like, It's ridiculous. So yeah, DJ Jones would be a big target for me. And the other big target for me, free agent wise, on the team is Dre Greenlaw. I really hope that they bring back Dre Greenlaw. I would bring him back. Now, obviously, there was some report that said that he could command somewhere between 14 and 17 million per year. I highly doubt that, based on all of his injuries that he's going through. And another team, no one's going to dump that much money on this guy who's been hurt for this long.
I know you had Sterling Bennett, 49er Access.
Yeah.
Because I had him on, and then you had him on, and I'm sure he said it on your stream. He has a lot of questions.
Yes.
With the injuries and how much the Niners are willing to give this guy. There's no way in hell you could pay him $14 to $17 million a year, based on the fact that what Sterling was explaining was that when the Achilles broke in the Super Bowl, when it ruptured, that was not actually the leg that was giving him problems throughout the year. It was his other calf. And then when he came back this year, that same calf that was giving him problems is what essentially ended his season. Yeah. So there's a lot of worries. I'm like you. I want him back. They played like a completely different defense with him in there. It was like for at least those 2 quarters, it was circa, the previous year, or maybe even a couple of years prior, when like the year we went to Philadelphia, when him, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Fred Warner were all on the same team at the same time. So, but I'm like you, man. It's going to be a tightrope of what the Niners are willing to offer this guy. And like you said, there's no way in hell, based on just his medicals alone, that any team would be offering this guy anything more than a 1-year deal. See how you are next year. If you can play a year healthy, revisit that. Either the 49ers revisit it, or they let him go and somebody else pays him. But you're right. As far as guys that I want back on this team, If you had to pick between him and say Talanoa Hufanga, I'm going Greenlaw all day, but at a price. You can't overpay. So that's
Yeah, I
that's my
mean,
word.
the only thing that's holding back Talanoa Hufanga, or I should say, the only thing that would make you question that, trying to bring him back is Jair Brown. Now, Jair Brown had a horrible year this season.
Horrible.
Just was an absolute mess out there. Now, is that Sorensen's problem? Did he do something that jacked him up? I don't know, but Sorensen was in charge of the defensive backs the previous year, and so now all of a sudden this season, Staley, I understand, was in charge of the defensive backs. Was that something going on there? I don't know. I don't know what was going on, but he was atrocious. And so seeing the times we did see Hufanga out there, it was like, hey, that's great. But really, Jair Brown's our future. And so if you were to say, okay, we're going to let him walk and stick with Jair Brown, I wouldn't look at it like, okay, that's a problem. I would look at it like, well, hey, look, he was a draft. We drafted this guy. He was one of the main reasons why the Niners got into the Super Bowl, because he took over that role from Hufanga and he played extremely well.
He did
So I
play
think there's
extremely
still
well
an
the previous year.
upside. There's still an upside to Jair Brown. It's a matter of getting him right. So that's what makes Hufanga expendable. Because let's say you're like, okay, let's bring back Hufanga. Let's do it. And then you're telling Jair Brown, now you're going to stay on the bench for 1 year, 2 years, however long his contract is. And Malik Mustafa's like, well, we're not going to sit him because he's this guy's killing it. So now Jair Brown's like, great, now I'm benched. So there's a lot to look at, a lot of dynamics with that. So I think Hufanga, likely he goes somewhere else. Probably the Rams. I mean, the guy played for USC, so I can see him going to Southern California. Another guy, Javon Hargrave. They already announced that he's going to be a June 1st or a post June 1st cut. I don't see him coming back. In fact, I'd be surprised if he did. It'd be for a lot less, which I'm sure he's not willing to take. And to be honest, I see him going two routes. One, I see him becoming this season's Chase Young, where he just waits and waits and waits and waits, and then all of a sudden he gets a 1 year deal from the Titans or the Saints or one of these teams that just says, okay, the Raiders, like, why not? Let's bring him in here. If there's any team that he's going to go to this next offseason, it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go back home, right?
They could probably get him because there's a chance they're going to go deep in the playoffs. So let's say they may even go to the Super Bowl. They didn't even win the damn thing. That's a signing that I can see them making, bringing him back on a 1 year deal, on a 1 year prove it deal, knowing that, hey, I'm going to a team that had a successful season, that has a lot of talent. That's where I want to go for 1 year.
Two players like we mentioned before, Trent Williams, the Niners are bringing him back. They think he has a lot of football left. I'm not so sure. And then, of course, Deebo Samuel. I think a lot of us, or at least I did, jumped off the Deebo bandwagon this year.
I got Deebo right there behind me. What do you mean?
You apparently like Deebo a lot more than I did.
I do. But this year he sucked.
He was really bad this year.
But
so I was
after.
Go ahead.
Well, it's hard to say because, I thought he played really good against the Vikings. He made that tiptoe catch along the sidelines. He had a really good game against the Vikings. He had a good game against the Patriots, I want to say. But then he had that rib injury. And then he had the pneumonia game against the Chiefs. And so when you combine a lot together, if I have pneumonia and it's going to take, I'm not an athlete, surprisingly. It's going to take me or you months to get into shape to where we can fucking, run all day, for 3 hours.
Yep.
So to me, I think the injuries slowed him down. We noticed that even on those end rounds, he didn't have that burst of speed. He didn't have that elusiveness he once had. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that he was not healthy most of this year. And now we saw towards the end of the season, the last two games, especially against Miami and against the Cardinals, he looked a lot better. And he looked more dynamic. He had a lot more speed. He was running the ball better. I just think this guy, look, he's very emotional. And I'm not saying, that letting him off the hook, but he's over emotional. And I think that this year was tough on everybody. I think even if we had won the Super Bowl, I think this still would have happened the same way. This still would have been the season the Niners had, where they had a lot of injuries, a lot of guys that were worn out. And that's why I think next season, it has to be, next year's the season where they have to get it done.
How much do
Absolute.
you, as the fan, I hate to admit this, but how much of you as a fan was not okay with them having a down year and kind of, getting a chance to draft in the top 15, getting a fourth place schedule? I know you want to have your team face good teams in order to test themselves, but there is going to be some things that help the Niners that come out of a really bad season. Those are two of them, a top 12 draft pick, a fourth place schedule. I mean, the Niners have a chance next year to kind of retake back, their pissing ground that they lost this year. I still think the West is winnable. I still think with Seattle, as long as they have Geno Smith, the quarterback, that the 49ers are the better team. The Rams, it's like a 50-50 split. If we go 5-1 next year, I could totally see that. I think the Seattle Seahawks, they're highly overrated. I don't understand why they get so much love, but there's that. I wanted to talk about, as bad as this season was, how good of a draft class that we had last year.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
Dominic Pooney, Ricky Pearsall late, Malik Mustafa, Renardo Green, the 49ers, who we as fans have been real tough on them with some of their drafts in the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era, for really screwing the pooch, especially early on in drafts. The Niners get a lot of love what they do late in drafts, but they've had some pretty big stinkers early in drafts, in a lot of the drafts that John and Kyle have had. To me, my biggest, if I had to take one player this year who I was just like, holy crap, man, like they have a star in the making, and that's Renardo Green. Him and Demo, to me, going into next year, is probably one of the top cornerback tandems in the league. And they're both really young and could get and had room to get better. So, who of anybody was one of your bigger surprises as a draft pick?
Oh, Dominic Pooney. I thought he was phenomenal. He was one of the best offensive linemen that we had this entire season. Yeah. He had 0 pressures and 0 sacks for the first like 5 or 6 weeks. And this guy's a rookie at right guard, an area that we struggled in before when we had Spencer Burford. I could easily see the Niners. Speaking of right guard, I know we're talking about rookies, but I could see them not bringing back Aaron Banks and putting Spencer Burford over there. Be like, yeah, let's go with that.
What about Ben Barch?
It's Ben Barch has a chance to do that as well, but the problem is that he needs to get healthy, and he's always hurt. So that could be your tandem is Ben Barch and Spencer Burford, and then you go out and you get yourself a center or you draft a center. But Dominic Pooney looked really good this season. I was really happy to see his development and see what he was able to do, getting those second level blocks in the run game as well. I thought he just looked phenomenal. And I thought he made, what's his name? McKivitz look better this season than Burford did. I mean, we knew last season that the right side of the offensive line was always like a nightmare. And the left side was always better. Now this season, it seemed like, the whole offensive line was pretty much a fucking mess, but I thought that Dominic Pooney played extremely well. Now, Renardo Green, I thought he started out pretty good and he ended really, really good. And you could really see him kind of come into his own out there, especially in man-to-man. I thought that Renardo Green looked phenomenal. Now, if you were to, have Renardo Green on one side, Deommodore Lenoir on the other, that would be great. I think our secondary would look awesome. Then you have to find another nickel corner to complement those two guys. I mean, we see what happens when you have Isaiah Oliver in there and he gets worked. This season, who do we see out there a lot? Fucking Isaac Yiadom. He was absolutely awful. Every time I was like, they're going to go right there. They're going to go right there.
Every time there's a completion, it's Isaac Yiadom. Oh my God.
Every time he'd line up, like wherever he was out on the field, when he line up, in my head, I was like, they're going to go there. They're going to go there. Damn it. They went right there. It's like, he'd make the tackle, but he was always like, he gave it up. Like, and And so
I'm a
that's what they got to
quarterback.
figure
I'm
out
throwing on him every time. I'm not even
every
going to try the other.
time. I mean, look, he's better than Isaiah Oliver, but that's not saying much. Saying that you're better than Isaiah
That's a
Oliver,
really low bar to have to jump.
look, I use this example a lot. Saying that you're better than Isaiah Oliver, that's like saying the shit I took last night is better than the shit I took this morning. But at the end of the day, it's all shit. You know, it's like, no, it's not. It's not good. Now, look, they can't go out there and buy, every single good player that's out there for every position. They're going to have to develop these players as well. You got Darrell Luter, which I think they need to explore what this guy actually has. They lost Ambry Thomas to the Colts. They lost Samuel Womack to the Colts. They should have kept Womack over Yadam, and that's one thing that I think the Niners need to do better at, is that they tend to lean towards the guys that they signed. They kept Isaac Yadam. Why? Because they signed him to a contract. They kept Devondre Campbell. Why? Because they signed him to a contract. So they made these guys a priority because they signed him to a contract. Well, unfortunately, it's kind of like, hey, look, if they're not as good as some of these guys are, then they need to play. They need to know their role and play behind some of these guys who are better than them. Now, when you look at the secondary, obviously, like Rocky Sin wasn't better than those guys. There wasn't a lot of depth there at all. But I think you got to see what you got in Darrell Luter, and I think they will draft another corner out of this draft coming up to try and shore up that nickel corner slot. Because I mean, look, Diamador Lenore, he can play the nickel and he can play it really well. But that's not where you want him every single down. You want him as one of your left or right corners. Other than that, I like what I saw towards the end of the season out of Tatum Bethune. I like seeing him out there. He looked faster. He looked more athletic than Devondre Campbell. And, he had better pursuit than Devondre Campbell. I don't know why Devondre Campbell was out there at all.
Like you said, they were paying him. Usually with the 49ers, it's a meritocracy, like Larry Krueger always says. It's just whoever's the best player is the player who plays. That definitely, like you said, wasn't the case this year.
No, it
best
wasn't.
Player didn't always play. It was the guy that they signed and it's making a lot of money is the ones that we used to see out there. Don't forget about Curtis Robinson that was injured. A nice depth piece linebacker who was injured during the preseason. There's D Winters has been hit or miss.
No, but Curtis Robinson. Okay, so he had an amazing preseason. We're all like, hey man, this guy's looking really good. And then I want to say it was like week 3, week 4, where they were like, Curtis Robinson is he's getting first team reps, and we're like, yeah, he's gonna come in, he's gonna take over for Devondre Campbell. Boom, injury, out for the year. Oh my god. It was like, of course he had to get hurt. It was like, nope, not gonna have him either. Like, oh my god. Everybody got hurt. Everybody. Elijah Mitchell. Oh, he's got an injury in the preseason. Oh, he's out for the year. What? Like, wait, what do you mean? Like,
it's weird how much the Niners look like they're going to have a lot of depth at a couple positions, that being like running back and middle linebacker in general. And both of those position groups took massive lumps this year. One of the things that somebody brought up in the comments that I wanted to bring up when we were talking about cornerback, Javarius Ward, of course, we all know what happened with him and his wife with the child. And then you see what he talked about how his wife doesn't even want to return to California.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I just don't see him coming back at all.
I mean, how could you?
Whatsoever.
How could you come back when you're like, hey, babe, I'm going to come back on a 1-year deal, but you're not going to be there because you don't like California and you have trauma there. But I'm going to go there. No, he's gone. He's gone. He's going to end up with like the Texans or, somewhere else. And God bless him. He was really good for us for a lot of his entire contract, except for this year. I would say is the most challenging year that anyone could have gone through. Anyone who was in his shoes would have found this season extremely challenging. This year, extremely challenging. The death of his daughter, and at the end of the season, the birth of his son. It was just, that's too much to deal with in one season. And you can tell that football was not his top priority because he had a lot going on in his personal life. And so, I wish all the best for Travarius Ward. I thought he was a really good cornerback, a shutdown corner. He shut down DK Metcalf year after year. But I think moving forward, it's going to be Renardo Green, Diamador Lenore, and they're going to figure out how they're going to fill in that nickel spot, either by free agency or through the draft.
I think the drafting of Renardo Green was a sign at least from a lot of Niners fans' perspective early on, that the Niners weren't going to bring back DreArea Ward. This is even before everything happened, the tragedy or whatever, his
Well,
poor
they had to.
play.
They knew that it was his final year. They knew at that point they were like, we're not going to be able to afford this guy. He's going to want top dollar. And so they had to do something. They're like, hey, we got to find someone we need help. They need help in the secondary as it was last year. They brought in freaking Logan Ryan. Like, what was he doing there? Like, oh my God, that was the worst.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting free agency wise where they go and the draft. It's going to be cool to have a day one pick early on, somewhat early on.
It's going to be cool. Now,
It-
that's a number 11 pick. So my question is, I'm going to interview you now. My question is, do you think Kyle Shanahan will be able to control himself if somebody slips to number 11, may it be like a quarterback, a receiver, an impact player? Do you think that he'll go after them, or do you think that they'll stay the course and say, no, we need to get a top flight offensive lineman in this draft?
John Lynch seemed to indicate in the press conference that they got to go back to what got him to the dance. So for me, I hate to say this, but edge rusher seems like, or defensive tackle, pass rushing defensive tackle, and I really would hope that they don't go there. But edge rusher, and I think a lot of fans want them going offensive tackle at 11, but I don't see that happening. I think you can't give Kyle that kind of power because he could draft another wide receiver and then we'll all be totally pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's going to be tough. I wish they had made it into the top 10 so that they could have traded out and picked up a couple multiple picks, which they technically could still do. Which a lot of people aren't talking about is that the Niners are at pick 11. Somebody might want to get to pick 11. The Niners can trade back and pick up an extra pick. I don't think it's going to happen. But if I'm John Lynch, I don't let Kyle get near the selection button. I leave that. I leave that to John Lynch. There's no way.
I think he does though, and it's funny because with Robert Saleh, if they bring back Robert Saleh, right? A lot of indications are that they're going to. There's a couple of guys out there that could make their way back to the Niners. Obviously, we talk about DJ Jones. That would fulfill a lot of our needs. But there's two other guys out there. There's three other guys out there that I could see might, tiptoe their way back into our locker room. Like, hey guys, what's up? I'm back. One of which, Charles Omenihu. He's coming off a bad injury year where he tore his Achilles at the end of last season. So I could see him coming back at defensive end, see what he's got left. The other two that I could see is Javon Kinlaw and Solomon Thomas.
I would say no to all three.
I would see that. I would too, but I could see these. I could see them bringing one of them back. Like, well, we don't know this guy. Solomon Thomas, no.
Solomon Thomas, what is he? He's been a bust.
He's been a bust, but
he's a bust.
The only thing that Solomon Thomas would give you is he would give you depth at the defensive tackle position. Is he the greatest? No, but I mean, last season he only played for $3 million. That's not a lot of money, and you could probably get him for less, if not the same, and to help give more depth behind everybody else. Not get him as your starter, but to add more depth to the team. I could see them doing something like that. I still think DJ Jones is their number one priority in getting him in at the defensive tackle. Kinlaw, Steve-O said Kinlaw doubled his numbers and didn't miss a game.
Of course.
Of course he did. But you know how big they were on Charles Omenihu, and I could see them trying to get him because he's coming off an injury year. He made $8 million last year, or on his current contract. And I can see him coming back for less.
Let's bring them all back. Let's get Richard Sherman
everybody.
Let's get Richard Sherman out of the booth. We'll bring back McGlinchey as well. Yeah.
Let's get Jimmy Garoppolo as our backup, and we're good to go. I'm just saying, these are names that I could see somehow, like one of them all of a sudden ended up on the roster. Like, oh, what the fuck? But because they need help. They need depth at defensive line really, really bad. And this team has a tendency of going back to the well and going with guys that they know and who they're familiar with. They're kind of suffering from the same syndrome as the San Francisco Giants. They like to go back to they used to like to go back to the well and bring the same guys they had like a few years ago. And you're like, man, what are you doing? This guy's past his prime. Get rid of him.
That's like every time we used to bring back Dante Johnson every single year.
Dante Johnson. There's a great example
out there, and yet he somehow made it back out of the
roster. He was always there. He's that guy at the party where you're like, this guy's always here. What the like, hey, what's up?
Oh, there's free beer here. So is he.
Oh, there's Dante Johnson, of course. But to me, they have to draft an offensive lineman and they have to sign one as well. Obviously, bring back Ben Barch. But they need to bolster the defensive and the offensive lines. When you look at their, don't forget Jason Verrett. Hey, that there it is right there. Nathan, you nailed it.
Super Bowl.
But those are the two areas they need the most help in my opinion, is defensive line, offensive line. But I can easily agree with you that if there's a good edge rusher out there, they're going to draft him. Because that's another area they need help with.
I feel that edge rusher, man, it's too. I mean, I'll tell you what, though. I mean, it looks like Leonard Floyd's coming back next year. It looks like Yetur Gross-Matos is coming back next year. If you push those guys to where they should be, which is like rotational pass rushers, then all of a sudden it makes sense. I feel like sometimes you play guys out of position, or you play a guy who's a backup at best, and you put him in a starter's position. You tend to find out why exactly why he doesn't need to start. So man. I haven't even gotten to, I don't know about you. You told me before the stream you haven't looked much into the draft. I haven't either. There's people already doing mock drafts out there. I don't know.
People watching college football playoff games, they're like, that guy should be a Niner. Okay,
people were watching the Notre Dame game and the Penn State. And I'm like,
come on, man, calm down.
There's a tight end on the Penn State, man. Niners need to take him. I'm like, guys, can we get the free agency first? Can the season end? Like, I'm still burnt out on the regular season and how bad the Niners were. I'm not thinking about the draft yet, although it's going to come soon. I mean, it's already January.
It is. It was so bad, though. This last season was so bad. I was watching a bunch of Brock Purdy highlights because I'm stupid like that. So I was watching, just 2024 highlights. Why not, right? And I'm watching these, and I'm watching these games, and I'm telling myself, we should have won that game. We should have won that game. We should have won that game. I mean, this team, I think I'm almost glad we didn't, because if we did, the Niners would be such pretenders going into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have beaten all these teams. Like, they should have beat the Cardinals. They should have beat the Rams twice. They should have beat Seattle twice, and they only beat them once. They should have beaten a lot. I mean, actually, obviously they beat the Jets. They lost to the Vikings, yes, but all the division teams, we should have beat all of them.
I agree.
Going into the Lions game, the Lions were 13-3. I want to say we could have been 11-4, and that would have been an entirely different game. Instead, we were 6-9 or whatever. It was just like, who cares? They're out of it.
Well, it was their Super Bowl. It was their Super Bowl. They got players saying they whooped us and they only beat us by 7 points. But
that's the thing, is like, oh, we whooped them. But it's like, well, look who was playing. I mean, come on.
Look at our kicker, dude. Like, if we had a normal kicker, we would have won that game.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think Jake Moody will be back next season?
No,
I think he will.
There's not.
I do.
Unless he's in a competition with somebody, I don't want to see.
He needs to be. But the problem is they drafted this guy, so they have him under team control for at least another 2 years, where they're paying him dirt cheap. I feel like they're going to bring him back next season to see what he's got left. This guy needs to go. This guy, he's so inaccurate. He doesn't know where the ball's going. All he knows is going that way.
His facial expressions. I can't tell you how many times, if I had a brick, I would have broken my television. That just like, oh, woe is me. Like, oh, poor baby. Like, oh.
The Jake Moody smirk.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Oh, God, it was so bad. Even against the Lions, they brought him in. I was like, he's not going to make this.
He's not going to make it.
And it's no good. There it is. Every time.
Every time, dude. There was not one time in maybe the history of this guy being our kicker, but this year that anytime they brought in Jake Moody, I always
even last year we were like, oh God, here he comes. The only time he was clutch was in the Super Bowl. He made all his kicks. Well, he got one block, but that wasn't his fault. Which actually ended up costing us the freaking game. Anyway, personally, he needs to go. And I would have kept him on IR the rest of the year because I thought Anders Carlson looked better. He didn't miss.
Both those kickers that they brought in looked better than him. And
Matthew Wright, the guy we had, he's back with the Chiefs. I was like, oh, of course he is. Dude, our kickers hit, dude. That's one thing I'll give Ryan Schneider. Our kickers, they'll take you down and they'll take themselves out with it. Also, two of them, like Matthew Wright took that guy down and then knocked himself out for the season. I was like,
oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Our kickers hit, man. And then Jake Moody turned his own ankle. Like, what are you doing?
Dude, it was just a comedy of errors all season with this team.
The
things that could have possibly happened to lose games or injure players. How do you get two kickers injured within 2 successive weeks?
I don't know.
Because your special team is so bad. Unbelievable.
In Buffalo, at one point I stopped watching the game and I was listening to a podcast. I had to work early that next morning and they were getting their ass kicked. And then my brother hits me up and he's like, when you have an iPhone, it reads you the text message. It was like, text from Daniel. Debo Samuel just he said Debo just fumbled on kick return. Like, I'm trying to sleep. I don't want to hear about this.
Are you an East Coast or West Coast guy?
West Coast. I'm in Northern California.
So I live in Rochester, New York. So I'm right near Buffalo. So I live in Bill's country.
Oh, so it's like snowing over there?
It's snowing over there. It's cold. That's why the guy came over. For anybody who watched the stream the other day and knew my internet was absolute, gaga. The guy was out there in the snow with his giant ladder fixing my wires and stuff. It's insane.
Just to get this stream going.
Just to have this stream tonight.
Hey, go Niners.
Andre all day, with updates.
He's stressing me out. I'm like, my wife's like, are you going to do
it tonight? I'm stressing myself.
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I don't know if we're going to do this or not. I don't know what's happening.
I had to redeem myself. I had to redeem myself for the stream the other day with my Empire State of Mind guys. They had to hold it down. It was bad. It just but now the internet is beautiful. It's crisp.
It's great. It's been crystal clear on my end too. Watch this really whole time we've been down. We just didn't know it.
We've been streaming to nobody. Yeah, that would be amazing.
The chat's like, where'd they go?
Like the Niners season in a nutshell, the microcosm. My internet was dropping like we were.
And then not okay. Now we're kind of going on this path of, and we were talking about the draft, and I accidentally veered us in, on a hard left turn down a bad path here.
Moody Avenue. Yeah.
Yeah, Moody Lane. But I mean, on top of that, right? Let's talk about the backup quarterback. When you had Brandon Allen going out there and he had a broken finger, I was like, why is he playing right now? What's going on?
My
He
God.
looked awful. I was like, oh God. And then, Josh Dobbs, who we signed the offseason to be the backup, obviously wasn't good enough because he didn't do anything. And then later he started against the Cardinals and he wasn't all that great. I mean, a lot of those drives stalled. Some of those passes were off. So that's another area that they have to improve on. But I mean, we say that every year. We have to get better at the backup quarterback position. When is there ever a perfect backup quarterback? There really isn't. Even when we had Sam Darnold, everyone was like, "Oh, Darnold sucks." Oh, everyone was talking smack about him. So
yeah, let's talk. How about this? Let's talk about the fact that we live in a world of instant gratification and people having short-term memories.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you have guys who I respect making hot takes, saying that they should trade Sam Darnold straight up and bring him back to the 49ers.
No.
And we'll trade Brock Purdy.
No.
We'll trade Brock Purdy back to the Minnesota Vikings in exchange. I mean, that's the kind of takes we were getting this year. I forgot who that is. I forgot who it is. I think it's
Chase Senior. And I actually like Chase Senior. But lately he's had, I don't know, he had that take and then
had to block him.
The other one recently that I was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? When he released a video saying, Would the Niners have made the playoffs if we had Nick Sirianni instead of Kyle Shanahan? No, we wouldn't have, because Nick Sirianni doesn't call the plays. He's just
Don't
a
you
rah-rah
listen,
guy.
there is this weird thing with content creators, if they associate with certain other content creators, that it all becomes hot takes and what ifs.
But that's what they
Because
all do. They all
because
do it.
you know why? Because people gobble that stuff up.
They do. They really do.
Whether
I
it's in a
can't limit
negative,
myself. I can't.
I negatively get affected by it because I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way this can't
And
be.
guess what? It's in every genre too, because on my other channel, we talk about movie news and pop culture. Same thing. There's guys out there who have the hot takes and who, you know, call out Star Wars for being woke and all this stuff, and they're just getting in gobs of money. They're getting super chats left and right. Everyone's pissed off. Like,
Brian Baldinger, he was the one that was saying that we should have traded Brock.
And I like Brian Baldinger, Baldy, but then he said that, and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what, dude? What are you talking about? Calm down. Like, look, Sam Darnold's had his best season ever, and even that, look, it's interesting to say, if we would have made the playoffs, we'd be playing the Vikings tomorrow. And it's funny because it would have been Sam Darnold going up against, you know, Kyle Shanahan and the Niners. You know, so
yeah, Baldy, he's no longer one of my favorid people.
Yeah, that was the worst take. I was like, oh man, what are you doing? You don't even need to do that.
Did you get a chance to get sucked into the Trey Lance vortex when he had a chance to play the other day? And
no,
I'm sure I won't say their names, but there's certain people who couldn't get over the fact that he was let go, and they still think that he would have been a better quarterback choice.
No, he wouldn't have been.
Than Brock Purdy.
He would have been a disaster. And they dodged a bullet with Trey Lance. You know, like I always say, God bless him, but Trey Lance was not prepared to be an NFL quarterback. He did not have enough experience. He did not have enough reps. Still isn't. And his whole career has been stunted to the point where I don't know when he ever will, or if he will be a starting quarterback in the NFL. You know, when we drafted him, if this guy would have had a chance to play for like Ohio State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ole Miss,
like a real school, yeah,
an SEC team, fuck, even Oregon, it would have made a difference for him for his entire career.
It never made sense to draft a guy who was a complete project on a team that was ready-made to win.
They knew, and that's the problem, was that all they knew was that they wanted to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. That's all they knew. They said, okay, we paid Jimmy. He got us the Super Bowl. We saw his limitations. We need to get somebody more dynamic. We need to get somebody more like Patrick Mahomes. That's what, and they rolled the dice on this shit.
It's a copycat league. Everybody does it.
They rolled the dice on this shit.
Chicago Bears did the same thing.
And they should never have done it.
Nope.
I mean, the amount of draft picks we lost to acquire Trey Lance, set this team back, put this team in the position it was in today.
Past draft saved our ass.
Saved our ass.
The 49ers, if they would not have hit on this past year's draft, you could say it's a fireable offense with having given up as much as they did. And even Jed York, you know, they had to go to Jed York and be like, hey, Jed, your third string quarterback who doesn't really have much of an arm, but he can see the field really well. He's a better quarterback than the guy we drafted that is expected to be the next Patrick Mahomes. Just figure we'd let you know, with all the picks we traded away to Miami.
Dude.
So
I think they knew. I think Kyle Shanahan knew very, very early on. I think he was like, oh shit, this guy's not getting it. It's not clicking.
And it's sad because a lot of us, including myself, were like so excited.
Oh, I was super excited. I almost bought the jersey. I almost bought it. I had it lined up in my basket, and I was like, oh, let me just wait. And good thing I did.
Remove ad. It's like you want to buy it so bad. Yeah.
It's just, you know what? It's too bad. And look, he had an opportunity to be the starting quarterback, and he got hurt. Now, Benali, I don't know if it's true. I know that he talked about Mac Jones, but I'm sure glad they didn't draft that guy. I mean, that would just be, I don't know. Who knows?
You touched on something earlier I want to revisit.
Yeah.
You said that if next year we don't make the playoffs. Listen, I am not a Kyle Shanahan guy. People are like, you're pro Shanahan or you're not. No,
That's just nonsense. Is what that is.
I think of like how easy it would be for him to get a job if we fired him.
Absolutely.
However, if the 49ers had another season like this year, next year, and they invest a lot of money in the draft, free agency, that conversation with him and John Lynch, as uncomfortable as it may be, could be a conversation that you start to talk about. Not yet. People are like, "Oh, you're just blindly loyal." I'm like, "No, trust me, I'm not that guy. I'm not blindly loyal. I'm just thinking, if is something like this year happen again next year, could the conversations be started about firing Kyle Shanahan and maybe moving on from John Lynch? I think so. Do I think they're going to have a better season next year? I hope so.
Oh, I absolutely think they will, because
Me too. I mean,
these guys got a lot to prove. Now, injuries is the one thing that could snake bite the whole season. We don't know. We don't know when injuries are going to occur. I mean, last season we were great. Didn't have very many injuries at all. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It's a game of attrition. Now, I think that two things. If we don't make the playoffs next season, I think John Lynch probably gets fired. And I think that he'll hang on to Kyle Shanahan to see what he can do the next season. If we get to the playoffs and we get eliminated, let's say in the divisional round or NFC title game, then I think that they'll put more pressure on them to succeed. I don't think either one of them gets let go. But if we don't make the playoffs, one of them is going to go, and I think it's going to be John Lynch. I still think that Kyle Shanahan has proven that he's still one of the better play callers in the league. And if you fired him, he'd get picked up in a second. And you have to look at, okay, if we fire him, who are we going to replace him with? We don't know. Okay. It's easier to replace a GM than it is to replace a head coach.
Yeah. Especially with a guy like Rand Carthon, who
he got fired.
He could be brought back into the fold.
He could.
If anybody goes first, if a doomsday scenario happens next season, I agree with you. John Lynch would probably be the fall guy for that.
I think even going into this season, I think a lot of these players have a lot to prove. I think Christian McCaffrey is eager to get back. I think Deebo Samuel's eager to get back. Same with Brandon Ayuk. Now, obviously, he won't be back until week 6 or whatever because he blew out his knee. But you got a lot of players that are eager to get back. Ricky Pearsall, this is a guy that got shot, was out for so long, and then the last 2 games.
Remember, he missed training camp too. He wasn't in training. He was injured.
And so the fact that the last 2 games of the season, maybe 3, but the last 2 for sure. He showed you why they drafted him. He was getting open. He was becoming a more reliable target. Now, if he becomes, your number 3 receiver starting the year next year, which he would be because Ayuk's going to be out, so you're going to have Jennings, Deebo, and Pearsall. That's still a good set of receivers. Now, obviously, they need a burner. They need somebody who has speed. They have Jacob Cowing. They don't seem to want to use him. They need to get somebody else in there that can stretch the field. And that was the problem that they were having, is that nobody could do that.
My sleeper signing in free agency, I'm just kidding, because he's not going to be a free agent. They're going to keep him. Bring in Tyreek Hill to the 49ers.
Oh, dude, I posted that. I was like, could the Niners be going after Tyreek Hill? No. Everyone was going bananas. But, I mean, think about what he would do. It'd be amazing. Here's the thing. I was talking with Johnny Dell of Johnny Dell's Football Academy over on YouTube. And one of the things he brought up, which I thought was a really, really good point, was that the Niners offense was solely built around having Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. He essentially was your burner. He was the guy that was going to come out of the backfield and create mismatches all over the field. When you looked at, everyone's like, well, there's no play action. A lot of the things that the Niners were looking at was, hey, look, we can have Brock in a 7-step drop, in a 5 to 7-step drop, and get the same kind of coverage issues with McCaffrey out of the backfield that we did when we did play action. but now we're having McCaffrey, run out, into the flat. And so that's what their offense was built around, was to have McCaffrey back there and then running out for a pass and causing mismatches all over the field. And when you have those kind of mismatches, that opens things up for the guys like Ricky Pearsall, Ayuk, Debo, that's where those guys find their openings. George Kittle, holy shit, the guy was amazing. But once you lost him, you saw them trying to do that with Jordan Mason, and it wasn't the same. When Jordan Mason would come out in the flat and be a receiving running back, the defense didn't respect him at all. They were just like, don't worry about that. And that was a problem because unlike McCaffrey, he doesn't garner, two defenders or one defender or one whole side paying attention to where he's at. I mean, in the previous season, we watched defenses just completely watch Christian McCaffrey run around because thinking that he's going to get the ball, and then that's when Ayuk be wide open down the middle.
When he's healthy, was a game wrecker for defenses, but he's also makes it so much easier for a guy.
But
just Brock Purdy this season, for all people who are big Brock Purdy haters or Brock Purdy getting on him, he lost over 40 touchdowns from 3 players that he did.
Yeah.
He only got 2 this year from the same a group of 3 players, which was
that's bad.
Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and Debo Samuel accounted for over 40 touchdowns in 2023. Mm-hmm. The same group only accounted for 2 in 2024. So when you think about Brock Purdy in his statistics not being the same and him not looking the same, that's a big deal. And people are like, oh, the great ones make up for it, blah, 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 blah. It's like, whatever. Everybody needs talent. Everybody needs to have talent around them. You can't just, it's a very, very few, they're outliers in the NFL that can go out there with absolutely zero talent around them. So, Benali made a good point. She says that the 49ers have another losing season. I don't know if he gets fired, but Kyle might quit. This season aged Shanahan. Another one of these, maybe he thinks he's in the Andy Reid Philly era.
He might be. I mean, we've seen how he looks. He looks defeated every day.
We're the same age. I was born December 14th, 1979, just like him. We are the same age. We were born the same day. I am a redhead, and I have no gray hairs, and I'm 45. So, yeah, and my beard is still red. So, all I got to say is I do look 45 if you look closely at my eyes and my wrinkles and stuff, but Kyle looks rough.
He does. I mean, look, I'm 40. I'm going to be 42 this year. And, he looks like he
definitely
55.
He's pretty rough looking. Sentinel made a good point. He said, calming down. Okay, calming down. My rebuttal to Tyreek Hill. Now, that was only made in jest, by the way, Sentinel.
I would love it.
He's broken his own son's arm. He's beat up his pregnant girlfriend, and he's just on the news for reckless driving. Yeah, like I said, just tongue in cheek, not really,
Yeah, and Joe Mixon punched a girl in the face and knocked her out, as she hit her head on the table when he was in college. And now everyone's like, "Go, Joe! Yeah, running back for the Texans." People do all kinds of dumb shit.
Hey, Stone Cold Steve Austin, everybody loved him in wrestling. He was a wife beater, so
he was a wife beater.
Yeah,
he absolutely was. I mean, the only person that really, I should say, the 2 athletes that really got the brunt of it. Now, look, do I condone fucking beating wives? Fuck no, that's piece of shit status.
Yeah,
but the 2 guys that got taken down the hardest, I would think, would be what's his name, the running Ray Rice, the running back for the Ravens, who knocked out his girlfriend in the elevator, and what's his face, the pitcher for the Dodgers, I forgot his name. He was a wife beater, and now he's not even in the league anymore. The guy was like a Cy Young winner, and it just goes to show you that, like, I mean, look at Michael Vick. But
he did his time. He paid the price.
He did.
His public scrutiny was great. People will never look at him in the same light they ever did in the past ever again, and he's had to live with it. Manali also says 49ers got outrushed in a majority of their games this season. A Shanahan offense doesn't function without the run game. The offense looked good until Mason's injury and never recovered. Benali, I agree with you, because the Niners offense is a lot like the Miami Dolphins offense. They're not meant to be down in and down out throwing from behind the sticks. That's
No.
not how they build their teams. The Niners and the Miami Dolphins run a similar offense, which is run game, play action, heavy run, which causes what it does in all the time in sports is if you run the ball enough and you're successful, you got to bring more people in the box. You bring more people in the box, there's less people to cover the pass. That's what they do. The Niners are a front runner team, just like Miami. They have a the Niners are front runners. People say they're not, they're just, you're right. They when it comes to like coming from behind and having to throw every single down, and I know that sounds really weird in 2024 NFL because everybody else in the NFL knows how to do it. The Niners don't do it well. Neither does a team like the Miami Dolphins. My brother's a fan. Watch their games. Anytime they're behind, they have to come. It's different.
Miami's a soft team.
Yeah.
Bauer, that's what it was. Yeah, Trevor Bauer. But look, they need to do something. At the receiver position, they need to get somebody with some speed. They have Jacob Cowing, but they didn't really use him all that often, and I'm not sure why.
He probably was in the Kyle Shanahan doghouse. I mean, he wasn't great on special teams, so there's that. You know,
why was he the punt returner? I never saw this guy make a difference. All he ever do was a fair catch, or he catch the ball and get hit right away. It was just like, what's the point?
Debo was okay as a returner, but still,
dude, the guy I liked. Well, the problem he doesn't have speed was Ricky Pearsall. When he was back there, I felt confident that he was going to catch that ball. But other than that, he's not a fast guy. And when you saw Pearsall running, he's not fast at all. He's just, I don't know. It was weird, but he's not a fast receiver. He can't break away.
Wasn't fast. Jerry Rice wasn't fast.
Yeah,
he had good game speed. He was just an incredible route runner. And Jerry Rice didn't tire. Jerry Rice was the same in the first quarter as he was in the fourth quarter. And that was what his greatness was all about. I think Jerry Rice needs to take people on that famous hill that he used to take players back in the 90s to see if they can get conditioned.
Should.
Bring Debo up there and his fat ass. Like, come on, chunky boy. We're going to go run the hill. Get your ass in shape.
Look,
you know?
I still like Debo, but I think that this next season, this is it. He has to come through this next season. Everyone's like, they're going to trade him. They're not going to trade him. Kyle's
I wanted him out too, but there's no way he's going to come back.
There's no way
he's not coming back. Ian Sharp says when the Niners are good, the run game is machine-like, 100%. 100%.
And to me, when it comes to football, just like in baseball, you have to have a good pitching staff. In football, you have to have a good offensive line. Mm-hmm. That is what makes your offense go. And this past season, they really cheaped out on the offensive line. They said, hey, look, they got us to the Super Bowl last year. Let's run it back. We drafted Pooney. That's going to help out. But they need to improve that. If they can improve their offensive line, look at the main teams that are out there. The Chiefs have a good offensive line. The Lions have a stellar offensive line. The Eagles the Vikings all have dope ass offensive lines.
The Niners have Trent Williams. That's
it. They have Trent Williams, and then they have Dominic Pooney, who's good.
Yes.
Other than that, everybody else has to go. Well, everyone, they need to upgrade their offensive line. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you have your weapons at receiver and tight end. Now, the tight end group needs to be a little bit better. They need to develop that. But you still have a dope-ass tight end. You have hella good receivers. You have one receiver coming back by midseason or week 6 in Brian Ayuk. On defense, you have a good secondary. It's your defensive line and your offensive line. That needs to be the focus.
Sentinel says weapons over offensive line does not work. Just ask Joe Burrow.
There you go.
Yep. And then
he's great.
Sentinel says he has been demoted to Tyshawn now. He has to run the hill with Jerry to get his normal name back. If that isn't a way to end the stream, I would love to go 2 hours, but I do have to get going.
No, it's all good.
But trust me, with the draft and everything coming around the corner, and if some breaking news happens, I'm always willing to jump on. But yeah, that was kind of a mic drop right there. That's a good way to end it. I mean, you can't get your name back until you're on the hill, bro. You can't come in fat again. Stop coming into the season fat. I don't understand it every single year.
Don't be fat.
Tell people where they can find you, because you are found in multiple places, as I found out. You are just not DreArea Sports. You also have a couple different areas where people can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at DreArea Sports over on YouTube. Just look up DreArea Sports; it comes right up. I also do a sports show for IE Sports Radio. It's a nationwide network. They have shows for as many regions as you can think of around the country, covering all sports from baseball, football, basketball, all that. So you'll find a lot of clips and streams for IE Sports Radio on my channel as well. And then I do my own streams as well, which is just under DreArea Sports. And so just go DreArea Sports on YouTube, like, share, and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by going to my website, which is called Nicotina.net. That's the name of my network, is the Nicotina Network, because I have 3 different channels, which is the Nicotina Show, which is a pop culture movie show, and also Beyond the Unknown, which covers like mysteries and all that other stuff. So if you go to my website, you go there. There's memberships, there's memberships for all 3 of my channels. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by going to Nicotina.net and become a member of DreArea Sports.
Nice having you on, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
I'd love to
awesome.
do this again.
For sure.
I've been going through a hell of a time keeping or retaining or just with co-hosts and doing I like to do at least 3 shows a week.
That's what I'd love to do, but my wife is like,
So right now I'm stuck. Right now I'm stuck at 2, and I'm doing it. I have a guy that I do a show with called his name is Al. He has the YouTube channel 49ers Plus podcast. Al's really good. I love Al. And of course my buddy James, who he pretty much just got a computer. So we used to work together just to come on and talk 49ers. But yeah, man, I'd love to do this again in the future, especially during the actual football season.
Yeah,
when we could
absolutely
really go after it and get into it. But everybody in the comments, thanks so much for coming through, whether on X or on my channel or on Andre's channel. Appreciate it. Everybody have a great rest of your night. Go Niners, and
Niners.
We'll see you on the flip side. Take care, everybody.